Hi everyone. So I just watched this video from The Daily Show, and I'll put it in the description. And it's about in colleges, whether or not to have trigger warnings in safe places. Um, and so basically, what they ended up saying is that college kids need to grow some balls because the world isn't going to be full of safe spaces and trigger warnings. And they also didn't seem to know what an actual trigger warning is. They kept on talking about microaggressions and that type of stuff, kind of saying that it's a trigger warning, but it's not. So I'm going to break it down for you. A trigger warning is at the beginning of a class, or before you go into text or a discussion, or even before you say something. If you know that you're going to talk about something that might be triggering, you say trigger warning, and then you say whatever the subject is. For example, trigger warning, this might be triggering for someone, but the thing that I'm about to discuss is sexual assault or violence against a minority, or stuff like that, where it's like people are dealing with this at this time. Like, this is college that they're talking about, where, for example, a personal example, I was in a class and we were watching a movie, Crash. And in this movie, there is a scene where a black woman is sexually assaulted by a white cop. And that is bad to watch, whether or not you've been sexually assaulted. But for me, as a survivor of sexual assault and sexual violence, I would have loved to have been told that was going to happen. I would have still watched it. The trigger warning is not saying, oh, you can just leave. It's not saying that. It's saying to prepare yourself for something that might be triggering, so that way you don't have to have the anxiety. Or I get panic attacks, I get anxiety, I get flashbacks to those times. And that happened when I was young. I was really young when those things happened. And so I've been able to deal with it, but it's still an issue that I have and something I'm still dealing with. And it's like really hard to be in a class and be like, I don't want to fucking start sobbing. I don't want to make it obvious that like I'm triggered. That's what being triggered is it's not being, oh, it's upsetting. That's not what it's saying. It's saying this might be like it hurt, like you can't speak, you can't breathe, like you can't function to a certain point, or at least that's how it is for me. And when they talked about, they didn't even talk about how it could be with, trigger warning, mental illness. Mental illness is a huge thing. It's very connected to trigger warnings. For certain people, things, and I'm not saying you have to have trigger warning for like, oh, we're gonna talk about like The Great Gatsby and like the money. Like that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about things that are actually like commonly triggering, acts of violence and acts of hate and that kind of stuff. Things that are abuse, things like that. That's what we're talking about. And like in the same class that I talked about before, the last class, there was no like trigger warning for a rape mention. And he just talked about how we're going to read excerpts from this guy's book who he went to jail for, trigger warning, raping black and white women. And it's like, and I mean, he didn't go into detail, but it's still like mildly triggering for me. It's not as bad as that first time, but it's like you need to realize that this isn't about censorship. This is about letting people know that something could be triggering for their mental stability. Because people who are mentally ill, or as we're now calling it, neurodivergent, who have things that if certain things happen, it may it hurts their stability. For me, for sure, it definitely makes me a little bit on edge. And as someone that is very open about suffering from mental illness, it's really hard to be in a class and just people mention that shit all the time, and it's like you need to like be like, just so you know, I'm about to talk about the subject. And I mean, we did that at the camp I went to, and yes, in that camp it was we said it was okay if you feel like this will be too much for you, you can leave. But in college, it's not saying that. We're saying that this is what we're going to talk about. So be prepared for it. Be emotionally prepared. At least like put a wall up. That's what I do most of the time, is I put that wall up so I don't actually feel it. So that way I don't become triggered. And ignoring that and frivolizing people's mental illness and feelings, which is what the video kind of does, is really messed up because this is someone's health. This is their mental health that you are choosing to ignore and kind of dismiss. And by saying that, like, the world isn't safe spaces and trigger warnings, but the truth of the matter, I go to a safe place all the time. I go to the LGBT center, my local LGBT center, which is a safe place. So you can't say that there's no safe places in real life. There are. So that's that. I was just watching and I was like, I need to talk about this. So let me know in the comments below what you think about it. Go watch the video. Let me know what you feel about whether or not colleges should have trigger warnings and safe spaces, and about some of their language that they use. Well, that's it for me. I'm sorry I haven't been posting my usual days and for a while. I got a job, and so my work schedule is still I'm still trying to figure out time when I can make videos. So hopefully I'll have one coming out on Monday. I'm also working on some pretty cool projects, which I'll post on a different account, but I'll also try and post it here too. So that's what I'm really excited about. I love you guys. Stay safe. Bye.